It was October 15th, 1995. The King of the Skies. A double-decker luxury plane known as Pan Am Flight 6 was on its way from Hawaii to San Francisco with 70 passengers and 7 crew members. People were settled comfortably in their seats. Some were reading books, others were gazing out the window at the blue expanse of the Pacific Ocean. While some were lost in dreams of their future, suddenly a scream shattered the calm atmosphere of the plane. Not one or two, but 4 masked individuals rose from their seats. They were armed and had hijacked the plane. Passengers held their breath, and the aircraft filled with the sounds of crying children and panicked adults. As soon as this news reached air traffic control, chaos erupted on the ground, and preparations for a rescue mission began. But before anyone could fully grasp the situation, just 5 minutes later, Pan Am Flight 6 vanished from the radar forever. One reason was that the hijackers had disabled the plane's location system. But the real danger was something else entirely, a threat beyond human control. The plane had flown directly into the mouth of one of the Pacific Ocean's largest and most dangerous typhoons. Fierce winds tossed the plane around like a toy. The pilot used all his strength to save the aircraft. But for the next 2 hours, control of the plane was in the hands of nature. After this deadly 2-hour struggle, one of the plane's engines failed, followed shortly by the second. The plane began to fall toward the sea like a ball of fire. Just as the plane was about to hit the ocean's surface, a few brave passengers overpowered the hijackers. They jumped from a broken door into the cold, unknown sea. The plane then disappeared into the water with a massive explosion, but somehow 60 people survived. All around them, for miles, there was nothing but the terrifying waves of the Pacific. Fortunately, just 100 meters from where the plane crashed, a rock protruded from the sea. With their remaining strength, they all took refuge on it. Wet, shivering, and terrified, the 60 survivors huddled together on that small rock. They had no phone, no signal, and no hope. Then, a passenger remembered he had a pair of binoculars in his bag, which had somehow survived with him. With trembling hands, he raised them and scanned the horizon. He saw a glimmer of hope, a small, mist-shrouded island about half a kilometer away. He screamed, "An island! There's an island over there!" Those who knew how to swim didn't waste a moment. They plunged back into the deadly ocean. Below them were dangerous sharks, and above were towering waves. But the will to live was stronger than any obstacle. After hours of struggle, only about 15 to 20 people managed to reach the island's sandy shore, exhausted but alive. The group that reached the island knew they had to rescue the others stranded on the rock. They gathered dry wood and vines and fashioned a makeshift raft. Taking the rickety raft, they ventured back into the treacherous waters. After many trips, they successfully brought every person from the rock to the island. When all 60 people were gathered on the unfamiliar land, the grim reality of their situation set in. This was no paradise. It was a desolate, deserted island with only a few coconut trees, some wild shrubs, and sand all around. There was no food and no source of fresh water. Despair washed over them. In the midst of this hopelessness, a schoolteacher named Mr. David stepped forward. "Friends," he said in a strong voice, "if we panic, we will all die. We have to live for each other." His words instilled a new sense of hope in the broken survivors. They organized themselves and began to care for the injured. Their biggest challenges were hunger and thirst. A young man named Michael bravely climbed a tall coconut tree and brought down some coconuts. It wasn't much for 60 people, but it was their first taste of hope. They started collecting rainwater in the crevices of rocks. Mr. David divided everyone into small teams. One team was tasked with finding edible fruits and roots, while another was assigned to build shelters. The most difficult task was fishing. Some of the younger men sharpened tree branches into spears and stood for hours by the sea, trying to catch fish. After many failed attempts, they finally caught a small one. The smell of that fish cooking over a fire was more fragrant than any feast. Everyone had a tiny piece. It was their first victory. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. They came to accept that help might never arrive. They learned to build huts from leaves and branches, and though the first rains washed away their efforts, they rebuilt them stronger. A woman who was a nurse learned to treat minor injuries and illnesses using wild herbs. They planted coconut seeds and cuttings from wild plants, thinking of the future. They spelled out a giant help on the beach with fallen trees, hoping a plane might see it. One day they saw a plane and they shouted and lit a fire to create smoke, but the plane passed without noticing them. The first few months were the hardest. The unfamiliar environment and lack of food and clean water led to the spread of disease. 10 people lost their lives. The survivors now numbered 50. Meanwhile, in the outside world, after months of searching with no sign of the flight, the passengers and crew were declared dead. 2 years passed. Then, a miracle occurred on the desolate island. A woman gave birth to a healthy baby girl. The baby's first cry changed the atmosphere of the island. Where there had been only death and despair, there was now the sound of life. The child gave everyone a new reason to live. 10 years went by. A small society had formed on the island. Mr. David had started a small school for the children, teaching them about a world they had never seen. Over these years, 5 more children were born, but 7 more adults lost their lives to illness and accidents. The island's population, including children, was now 48. 13 long years had passed since the crash. One morning, they heard a sound they hadn't heard in all that time, the horn of a large ship. At first, they thought it was their imagination, but when the sound came again, they ran to the shore like madmen. They lit the biggest fire they could, screamed, and waved their hands with a final glimmer of hope in their eyes. This time, a miracle happened. The ship saw them. The rescue team that arrived by boat was moved to tears. They were looking at people the world had declared dead long ago. The 13-year-long horrific wait was finally over. When the 48 survivors returned to civilization, the world was stunned. Their story seemed unbelievable until a survivor's diary was revealed, which chronicled every day of their 13-year struggle, every death and every birth. This incredible true story of human resilience was later documented in a book titled The Lost Survivors of Flight 6, 13 Years on the Island. It teaches us that even the smallest ray of hope can pierce the darkest of nights, and the human spirit is stronger than any hardship.